Street. But first, a report on the latest venture of a rock star whose records and concerts make millions, but whose face is seldom seen.
In the 60s and the 70s, going to a Pink Floyd concert meant not only a musical extravaganza, but a visual feast as well, with firework displays, lasers, and massive helium-filled models floating above the auditorium. Then came their final act with The Wall, a stage show that reputedly cost nearly $2 million to produce. The Wall, like many of their previous shows, was the brainchild of lead singer Roger Waters. Now, after the breakup of the Floyd, Waters is taking to the road again with perhaps his most adventurous enterprise yet. With musicians such as Eric Clapton and Chris Stainton in his band, the tour starts in Stockholm in 3 weeks' time and arrives in London on June the 21st. As he knows from his experience with the Floyd, Harvey Goldsmith has more than a concert to promote.
We're selling it as a concept, I suppose. Our biggest problem was that is trying to explain what the pros and cons of hitchhiking as a project is, because the album's only just been out 10 days. And it's slowly but surely sinking home.
The idea is to have 3 massive screens on the stage representing the walls of a room. Film will be projected onto each of the screens, providing dramatic visual effects throughout most of the show. But as with Walter's other concepts, there's also a very elaborate set design, requiring careful planning and construction. So it's no coincidence that a former architect and engineer had the responsibility of putting this part of the production together.
Of the mirror. And that's where it hinges about.
Jonathan Park and Mark Fisher first started working with Walters on the Floyd's Animals tour and are experienced hands at bringing his grandiose designs into being. Much of what will be projected onto the screens will come from the pen of Gerald Scarfe, the famous cartoonist who also worked on The Wall.
Roger and I worked together on these storyboards at the beginning to try and show exactly what will be happening on the screens across, that would be across Earl's Court, for instance. And it just gives us some idea of the way it'll look. I mean, a lot of this gets altered as we go along, of course.
The idea of projecting an image across the entire width of Earl's Court is one thing. Actually achieving the effect is quite another.
They decided that they were going to have this 90-foot wide screen with 3 projectors behind it, without consulting the filmmakers. And at that point we had to scratch our heads slightly and work out how we were going to shoot anything, or even optically arrange anything to fit that format. And it was a nightmare.
But after many sleepless nights and a great deal of ingenuity, the problem seems to be solved. What now has to be refined is how all the visual information can be coordinated with the music coming from the band.
You have the 3 projectors locked up in sync, which have a time code on a track which feeds a 24-track tape machine. Now, if something horrible happens to the main supply or the one projector breaks down, that tape machine will go berserk. Which means for the poor band members on stage who are trying to keep in time with it through headphones or whatever, they will suddenly lose their place in the show and synchronization will fall apart. That, I suppose, is the worst recurring nightmare that I can consider happening.
An angel on a horn pulls across to greet a fellow rolling stone.
The whole complicated production process is being masterminded by Walters, a man who chooses to remain anonymous, preferring to let his work do the talking for him.
He's got a great sense of theatre, and I think that's basically what everyone trusts in, is his knowledge that he can make a large crowd, and at Earl's Court there will be 16,000 people watching them play, go woo at the right point.
Roger has undoubtedly put an enormous amount of the direction into the thing at the very beginning.
I really admire him for doing it, because it takes some guts, because obviously it doesn't cost, it costs a hell of a lot. I mean, I know what my budget is, and I dread to think what the total budget is for the whole thing.
I believe this will be an enjoyable experience. I've no idea how much money has been spent on it. I mean, luckily it's not my concern. Harvey can worry about all that.
Economically, we're not going to cover our costs because we're not doing enough shows to give us the opportunity to cover the costs.
I see it as a very large sort of opera, unsubsidized opera, I say ruefully.
pros and cons of hitchhiking is an enormous gamble, both professionally and financially for Walters. We wait and see whether it pays off at Earl's Court on June the 21st. And that...